wasn't too sure about the title, because a lot of the criticism that natural therapies have faced in the last 3 years has been because perhaps sometimes the incorrect terminology is used. Because boosting the immune system, it's very attention grabbing, but is it the most appropriate word to use? And it certainly has created a bit of controversy. Perhaps a better title would have been natural immunomodulators, or perhaps natural ways of supporting the immune system. However, people, when they use titles like this, they will not grab your attention. So I was being a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I decided to, like millions of others, use the term boosting the immune system. And of course, the flowers that you can see there is probably one of the most popular plants that is used in herbal medicine for supporting and boosting the immune system, Echinacea, and we'll be talking about Echinacea herb very, very soon. Now, most of you that are attending this evening's webinar, I am sure, will have attended my first webinar, part 1, which was more about, part 1 was the germ theory or terrain theory. Now, I know that there's a lot of new attendees to this part 2, this boosting your immunity webinar. This webinar, you can visit my website. And when you visit my website, you'll see the blog that I wrote. It's a very comprehensive blog, and it's looking at the controversy behind Béchamps and Louis Pasteur, and the difference between the germ theory, which underpins modern medicine, and the terrain theory, which pretty much underpins naturopathy and natural therapies. By the way, if you have not, and most of you would have subscribed to my newsletter or through Perfect Potion, you will receive the information about the webinars when I do them. So the video to part 1, the germ theory or terrain theory, for those that haven't seen it, will be posted on the YouTube channel. There will be a link from my website as well, so that you can watch it if you haven't had a chance to watch it, and I really do encourage you to check that one out. These webinars, they usually go for about 1 hour. I have timed this one approximately, and it'll go for about 1 hour and 10 minutes. It's just, I couldn't fit, there's just not enough time to fit everything in, and I'm probably going to suggest that there could be another webinar next month, rolling on from this one. Now, also remember that all my books, they're very informative, and welcome to everybody from around the world that will be watching this webinar as well. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope that you enjoy the webinar. I do want to say a very special hello. I know that Harry in the UK always attends my webinar, so a very special welcome and thank you, Harry, for watching. Now, free shipping offer is for all over the world for orders over $200. Now, I want to start off, and this was only posted on the 12th of July last week, and The Guardian stated, vaccines and antivirals are not enough to combat the current Australian Omicron surge. Now, by the way, one more thing, this time there is a blog that you'll be receiving, a link to a blog that I've written, which is titled Boosting the Immune System. But what you will also be receiving is the PowerPoint presentation this time. And I'll explain later why you'll also receive the PowerPoint presentation. So if there's anything that you missed out, well, you can go back and watch the video, but you can also check out the PowerPoint presentation. There is a link here if you do want to read the full article that was posted on The Guardian. The title doesn't give you much hope, does it? But all it suggested to me was, it seemed that, like a lot of the health regulators, are wanting to mandate certain restrictions again. understandably, many reasons. The hospitals are reaching full capacity, for example, in ICU units. And so perhaps one of the suggestions was mask wearing, and they're certainly talking about that. They have introduced that in schools again, and because of course there is a burden on the health system, and that's probably why the Guardian article was very concerned that vaccines and antivirals are not enough to combat this Australian Omicron surge. Now, what was more, I suppose, alarming, or I was a little bit concerned about, was, and once again, I do encourage you to check the link to Radio National. This is the ABC, Australian Broadcasting Commission. There is an excellent show that is run by Norman Swan. It's called it's like the Health Report, and it goes for 30 minutes once a week. Now, in this week, he interviewed a world-renowned immunologist. This immunologist didn't have much good things to say. Basically said he was baffled by the way that the white blood cells that are required, this is from our natural immunity or acquired immunity. So this is from vaccinations, or from if you had been infected with previous strains of COVID, they're not responding. So the antibodies that we build are not responding well to the new variants of COVID-19. So don't ever become complacent to say, yep, I've had COVID, I'm not going to get it again. Because there's a good chance, because this is a new variant and it is baffling immunologists. Now, dare I say, and I'm not going to say that, I don't want this to become an argument about getting vaccinated or not. It's not that at all. Vaccinations do help, and we'll discuss how natural remedies can actually help vaccinations. But my point is that this immunologist that Norman Swan was interviewing actually just had his 4th shot, and he became seriously ill. And so that is a bit of a concern, isn't it? So what am I going to suggest, and what have many others been suggesting? Well, perhaps now is the time to look at ways of supporting the immune system naturally and in healthy ways. And simply by promoting well-being and health can be an excellent way of supporting the immune system. So if you do become ill, if you do become infected, your body's going to be better prepared to respond to it, and there's going to be a less likelihood of long-term health issues associated with the infection. So the title of the article was not very good at all. Living with COVID ain't rosy. And the immunologist was suggesting we're taking 2 steps forward and we're taking 3 steps backwards every time. Check it out. It's very interesting. And I think if wherever you are in the world, you will be able to check this article out. Now, I did mention this in the first webinar, but when you do a Google search for boosting immunity, I found 17 million results. So for those of you that are looking, well, Sal, you're saying that, well, let's boost our immune system naturally. Let's support our immune system naturally. Where do I go to? Where do I turn? Especially if you do a search on it, you'll find more than 70 million results. Interesting thing is that nutritional supplements and food featured very highly in this search. Now, at the same time, I was also very interested, and this is probably what the stimulus for doing this series of presentations was. It was this very article, because I found what Wagner and Al had to say. Wagner and et al., that means, and many other authors in this particular paper, they wrote a paper that was very critical of all these 70 million websites, or the majority of them, that were promoting ways of boosting the immune system. Well, that's why I wanted to start off with that part, that I wanted to mention the last week's health report, for example, this week's health report, where Norman Swan interviews the immunologist, saying, well, the vaccinations on their own are not are not working. So we need to find ways of being better prepared if we do get infected. Well, they certainly do. When I say they're not working as effectively with some of these latest strains of COVID. Now, this article was very critical because this was probably at the height of the pandemic, and when vaccinations were not yet available or just coming onto the scene. And in a way, what I'm also critical of is that these articles, some of these articles that Wagner is critical of, online articles, were suggesting that just healthy eating, taking supplements was going to be better than immunization. And so this is why they claim this was very misleading. And of course, a lot of these online articles and posts that were made, Wagner claims, were devoid of sound science. Now, I got really frustrated, and what the authors of this paper also were very critical of those researchers that were doing research into natural therapies. Now, I get very upset. I got very upset about this. Well, hold on. On one hand, you're saying, oh, there's not enough sound science to support all these natural methods of supporting your immune system, and on the other hand, you're critical of those researchers even doing research into natural remedies. Well, hold on, you can't have your cake and eat it as well. I'm very sorry. So let's move on. But this became the catalyst for me to do these webinars, and it's actually become the catalyst for me, and I will show you. This is the first time I'm making this announcement. I've decided I am working on volume 2 of the complete guide to aromatherapy, but I became so enraged because there is so much good research out there, especially whether it's in aromatherapy, whether it's in herbal medicine, whether it's in the field of fungi, forest bathing, nutrition, support, or good evidence showing that all these methods are able to support the immune system. So I'm actually working on a book. I don't know if you can see it. The title, I was going to make it The Complete Guide to a Healthy Immune System, but I've actually changed my mind. I think I'm going to just call it Boosting Your Immune System Naturally. So I'll tell you more about that in the coming months. Now, and as I was going on to say, my biggest concern was that during the pandemic, there was like this self-imposed self-censorship within the complementary and natural therapies community. The health regulators cracked down on those health providers that provided, natural therapies, on crackdown on chiropractors, naturopaths, herbalists, and holistic healers. Now, while I personally don't support many of the arguments of the anti-vaccination advocates, I don't believe that this should lead to a crackdown on all the complementary therapies that can be very useful for supporting a healthy immune system. Now, and I would like to give, for example, a very interesting one is the health report on Radio National, on our ABC, our Australian national broadcaster. Pre-COVID, that show would regularly be presenting information about natural therapies and present especially research behind a lot of the natural remedies. But over COVID, and since the main height of the pandemic is over, we don't see the health report doing many reports on complementary therapies, which is such a pity. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the immune system. There will certainly be a chapter which will try to describe what I refer to and what many have referred to as probably the most complex system in the body. It is complex because it actually talks with all the other systems in the body, the digestive system, the nervous system, the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system. The immune system is extremely complex. And so it is a very simplistic when we say that the immunity is broken up into two parts. We have the frontline defense, which is called the innate immunity, referred to as innate immunity. And this is often the skin, for example, all the tissues and the cells, the mucus secretions, the gastric juices in the body. These are all the physical and biochemical barriers, which are very important. And then, of course, you have all your macrophages and natural killer cells and dendritic cells and leukocytes, all the white blood cells, so on. They all form part of this non-specific cellular response. So they'll just simply go out and attack an intruder. Now, the second line defense, which is that is referred to, is called adaptive immunity. Now, this will take a little bit longer. And this is like in adaptive immunity, we have to train ourselves to identify the pathogen, and so that it can then develop antigen-specific antibodies to attack the intruders, virus or bacteria, whatever it may be. So this can be done through either, it can be naturally acquired, or it can be done naturally, or it can be acquired. I'm very sorry. I've just closed the door and my dog is locked in the room and she just wants to go outside. So I'm going to leave this desk for 1 second. Come on out. Sorry. Sorry about that. Lucy has often jumped in my chair just prior to me starting the presentation, thinking that she can take over. And but she certainly is always with me when I'm working and preparing for these presentations. So what was I talking about? I was talking about the adaptive immunity and antigen-specific antibodies. So these can be this could be natural, or it could be acquired. Now, acquired simply is referring to vaccinations. Okay, so when we use a vaccination, we are stimulating the adaptive the adaptive part of the immune system. If you get the infection, once again, your body would normally develop the antibodies so that it would recognize the pathogens in the future. But of course, as we know, with many viruses and even with a lot of bacterial organisms, they are constantly changing. And as a result, they may not be recognized. The next variant will not be recognized as well. And this is what the interview that Norman Swan had with the immunologist was all about. So don't panic and don't feel too worried about that. There are other viruses as well, which present us with the same challenge. Now, the technical term that should be used, rather than saying immune boosting, should be immunomodulation. Now, the term was originally developed in reference to the response that one has after a vaccination. So the science typically underpinning immunomodulation involved the development of vaccines and the development of the antigens to provoke a desired immune defense in the body. Now, John Wardell, Professor of Public Health at Southern Cross University here in Australia, reminds us he'd written an article, a paper called Follow a Natural Health Philosophy. Vaccinations may have more in common with it than you think. Now, what he reminds, this is food for thought, because what he reminds us is And he did a comprehensive survey, and his survey, what his survey wanted to do was, are those people that are more philosophically aligned with natural medicines less likely to be vaccinated? And they couldn't actually conclusively say, yes, that was the factor. There are many reasons why people make decisions to get vaccinated or not vaccinated. But what Wardell wants to remind us is that vaccinations are a way of actually presenting a part of the virus through, and triggering the adaptive immune system response. So it is the body itself that is going to build the natural, is going to build what we call acquired immunity to that particular pathogen. So as I quote him, vaccinations prepare the body's immune system in the same way as natural exposure to the infection does. It just does it in a safer, more controlled way, with a much larger dose. So it's in a very controlled way. But however, as we know, are vaccinations as effective against all these different subvariants? So what options do we have? The options are to look at ways of naturally supporting the immune system or boosting the immune system. Now, it's very interesting that since, because when you look at the amount of research that went on pre-COVID, investigating the role of natural natural ingredients, herbs, and so on, it was very limited pre-COVID. But since the onset, since the beginning of COVID, since about 2020, there has been so much research exploring how many of the natural compounds, many of the herbs, how the role of diet, the role of traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, psychological interventions, and all these other holistic treatments, the way that they modulate the immune system. There's been a lot of research examining the way in which all these natural therapies modulate the immune system. Now, immunomodulators are often categorized in, there are three categories to categorize them: immunoadjuvants, which we'll talk about very soon, and herbs, it's believed, some herbs can play a very important role in helping the vaccination be more effective, supporting. That's what immunoadjuvants do. They actually boost the vaccination, and this can be done naturally with herbs. Immunostimulants. This is something that stimulates the immune system, and immunosuppressants, something that would suppress the immune system. So when would we need to use immunostimulants? Whenever you catch a flu, a cold, that's when immunostimulants are called for. Immunosuppressants, allergies, for example, inflammatory conditions, another example, cancers, for example, that's when we need to use immunosuppressants. Now, as I said there, I wanted to explain, because immunoadjuvants are not often referred to in natural therapies, but some of the more recent research is suggesting that some herbs can play a very important role. Okay, there are many medicinal plants that have been traditionally used to support and modulate the immune system. And there are a number of ways in which they can modulate the immune system. They can stimulate both the innate and the adaptive humoral and cellular immunity. They can interfere with those pathways that cause inflammation. And the third one is interesting, and I touched on this in the first webinar. They can also modulate the gut microbiome. There is a very strong link between the gut microbiome and the immune, and the healthy gut microbiome leads to a healthy immune system. And essential oils can play a very important role here as well. So they're the three ones. Now, one of the most popular in terms of botanicals that has been researched in terms of its immunostimulating activity is echinacea, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Now, interestingly, echinacea has been found to both have an effect on the innate and adaptive immune system, but it also has antiviral, anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity. So it really packs a big punch. It is an amazing herb. Now, I just want to, and I'm going to get straight onto now all the different ways, but I just want of supporting the immune system. But another immunologist suggests that the role, and I think she has more a point with the term boosting, is not quite the correct term to use to say we're boosting the immune system. Having a stronger immune system, she says, is a misconception, because having too much of an immune response can lead to too much inflammation. So it can be just as bad as having a weak response. So and often, and this is a very much a holistic strategy with herbal medicine and aromatherapy. She rightly points out that many of the symptoms that you experience are simply a sign that that your body is fighting back against the infection or the virus and triggering an immune response. So we want to be very careful in managing the symptoms that we have. And in herbal medicine and aromatherapy, and I'm not going to go into this, and maybe that will be what I talk about in the next presentation, is more the treatment strategy, the approach that you take. And like the use of diphoretics to promote sweating, for example, is very common within more traditional healing approaches. The use of adaptogens. These are herbs to actually promote your cellular response of all the body and your well-being. This is like, and we'll talk about some of the adaptogens. They could be some of the ginsengs, for example, astragalus. They all can act as adaptogens. So therefore, if we're looking at what we call disorders of the immune system, and it's not really, we can say that the immune system status is weak or it's overactive. And when it's overactive, it leads to chronic inflammation and it leads to problems of autoimmunity. It could lead to skin diseases, allergies and asthma. It could lead to rheumatoid arthritis and cancer. When it is weak, you're going to be more prone to opportunistic infectious diseases. You could be more prone to cancer and tumors, for example. Now, what I've done here is taking a summary of the most common ways that are used to promote boosting the immune system. And I thought I'd just list them all. Keeping your alcohol intake moderate, reducing stress levels, eating plenty of fruit and vegetables. And I thought it was not just eating a balanced diet. I thought the emphasis is very important, eating plenty of fruit and vegetables. Getting the nutrients your immune system needs. So this is a little bit different. So we'll talk about this. This could be more specific nutrients such as vitamin C or vitamin D, for example. Getting good quality sleep. Could do a whole session on sleeping and the importance of sleep. And when we come to talk about aromatherapy, well, aromatherapy plays a secondary role. By promoting good sleep, you're going to be promoting a healthier immune system. Then there were those that said, wash your hands often. Of course, very important. Keep up regular exercise. Exercise was found to be very important. And this doesn't mean training for a marathon or anything, but making sure that you do some regular daily physical activity. Many talked about having a healthy, happy gut, looking after your gut microbiome, maintaining good personal hygiene, and quit smoking if you haven't already done so. These were some of the many promoted strategies that were in the 70 million blogs that were promoted as ways of boosting your immune system. Others talked about the importance of reducing, dialing down inflammation. While inflammation itself is a natural immune response, if your diet includes sugar, alcohol, gluten, dairy, environmental toxins, processed meats, highly processed vegetable oils, just to name a few, then there is going to be higher risk. It's going to be interfering with those inflammatory pathways, interfering with the cytokine productions. It might lead to higher levels of inflammation in the body. And if you do catch a virus, if you do get influenza, and your body is in this state of inflammation, the symptoms may be far more severe. Now, the same writer, different, she actually written some very good papers and very good blogs, also suggests laughter as the best medicine. So here she is talking about a healthy mental outlook and taking care of our mental health. Now, it's very interesting. She referred to a 2001 study. There weren't many studies in this. What an awesome study. Studying the effects of humor and mirthful laughing. It resulted in an increase in natural killer cells and immunoglobulin antibodies. It boosted your white blood cell activity for up to 12 hours. And here I was over COVID. I was actually, especially in the middle of the lockdowns, instead of watching all these I did watch a lot of great comedy shows, but I was watching all these post-apocalyptic shows. So it wasn't leading to any laughter. So laughter is excellent for boosting the immune system. Now, of course, Berkeley also goes on to talk about the link between our mood and immunity, and she speaks about the positive emotion. People that were regularly, and this is based on studies that have also been done, people who have regular positive emotions were less likely to catch a cold than those who rarely felt positive emotions. Now, she also recommended singing our way to better health. Now, I must say that in the paper, she also said that listening to music did not have the same response. But I find this one interesting, because guess what they did during the middle of the lockdowns? They actually stopped people from, they said, no, singing is banned because it'll increase the risk of COVID infections. So I find that one interesting, even though singing our way to, singing is recommended as a way of boosting the immune system as well. Now, let's get on to aromatherapy. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because there are often many essential oils that are referred to as immunostimulants or immunomodulators simply because they have bactericidal, antiseptic, and antiviral properties. And if that was the case, truly was the case, 80% of the essential oils that are present have antimicrobial activity. And so we could say all of these essential oils can have a really potent effect in helping to boost the support having an immunostimulating effect. But here we are talking more specifically about the impact that these essential oils have directly on the immune system and the function of the immune system. So while there is so much research, clinical evidence about the antimicrobial properties of the essential oils, and it's very well documented, there is very little information about the immunostimulating activity of essential oils. And it's actually really poorly understood, even within aromatherapy circles. I made a list here of all the essential oils that are listed as having been called immunostimulants or beneficial to the immune system. And it's an interesting list, because I would have added more to this list. I would have added all the spice oils such as clove or cinnamon or ginger, for example. But these were the oils that people, that many many well-known and all authors of aromatherapy have made a list. Dr. Jean Valnet, Patricia Davis, Shirley and Len Price, Marcel Lavarre, Philippe Malibu, Kurt Schnabel. These were the list of oils that they listed as having immunostimulating activity. Now, Davis makes a very interesting comment suggesting that any essential oil that can support and strengthen the immune system by directly opposing the threatening microorganism or by increasing the activity of the body or the cells to fight them is going to help to support the immune system and strengthen the immune system. So that definition suggests that, well, if it's antimicrobial, therefore it's going to support the immune system. And it's kind of a fair point to make. It will certainly help. Now, I love the work of Kurt Schnabel, and in his book, Advanced Aromatherapy, written in 1998, he said that the research into the immunostimulating properties of essential oils is very limited. We know very little. But he made a statement which says, I'm very excited about this space because, and he even coined a term, which it's a pity it hasn't, I don't know if it is being used, aroma immunology, because he knows, he understood that there is a very strong relationship between essential oils and the effects that they have on the immune system and the effects that they can have on increasing the activity of immunoglobulins and white blood cells in the bloodstream. And this can be positively influenced with the use of essential oils. Now, Hurt also makes a very interesting comparison between allopathic medicine, so conventional medical medicine, and here he's perhaps talking allopathic medicine, he's talking about, well, immunization, and he states that allopathic medicine should be chosen for the prevention of some infectious diseases by immunization, while aromatherapy works best for improving the immune system. However, he goes on to say that aromatherapy works best for infections and acute conditions that are susceptible to quick intervention and for an improved immune response. So he suggests that we should, it works, aromatherapy should be used in those conditions that allow it to work safely and easily. Now, he's also, and this is very interesting because we could say the same thing about other botanicals such as herbs and fungi as well. He suggests that aromatherapy should be implemented. If aromatherapy is implemented when the symptoms are already fully developed, then a cold will not be averted. However, essential oils will help to alleviate and minimize any of the unpleasant symptoms. He suggests that the essential oils, without the use of antibiotics for common colds, is very safe and proven method of minimizing symptoms, preventing secondary or super infections, and improving the competence of the immune system. Now, this is a very interesting observation, and it's a pity that there has not been much research in this space. But what he suggests is those essential oils that are able to develop various chemotypes have the potential for adaptability, which can also be interpreted as having more immunostimulating properties. Now, I find this interesting because, as we know, this is exactly what viruses are constantly doing. They're constantly changing subvariants. Now, there are some essential oils that are quite complex and they are classified, they have various chemotypes. And these essential oils, and he uses basil, rosemary, and thyme as an example of essential oils that could be useful. Now, we know that definitely rosemary and thyme was on that list, but basil wasn't. But certainly basil, there is a lot more opportunity to investigate the immunomodulating activity of the essential oils. And now in 2020, Sanders states still that there's still very little clinical study or data involving the immunomodulating effects of essential oils. But they do suggest that the way in which essential oils could have a immunomodulating effect on the immune system is by, one, stimulating the circulating lymphocytes and enhancing their phagocytic activity. So that's the ability to gobble up those intruders. Or secondly, they can suppress the response involved in inflammation and decrease cytokine production by interfering with the key mediators of the inflammatory pathways. And there's been a lot of research into those 1,8-cineol-rich essential oils and how they can play a very important role in reducing respiratory inflammation due to increase in cytokine productions. We've heard the term with some patients with COVID, a cytokine storm, which causes a whole lot of side effects. And essential oils may play a very important role here in helping to suppress inflammation. Now, other authors have also investigated, and once again, this paper came out in 2019, probably just at around the same time that we started hearing about COVID. So COVID has been a trigger also for a lot of research investigating essential oils and proving that they can and should play an important role in helping to modulate the immune system. So once again, these authors suggest that one way is that essential oils can increase the circulating lymphocytes and enhance phagocytic activity, thus improving bacterial clearance. They can suppress the response involving inflammation and decrease cytokine production, and they can also interfere with the key mediators of the inflammatory pathways. However, when you go and do a little bit of research into which oils are actually being investigated in terms of the immunomodulating activity, I've put them in two groups. One is those in vitro studies, and this is what the critics are often saying: you can't speculate on in vitro studies, and we shouldn't speculate just purely on in vitro studies, which mean they're not tested on humans. They're testing the essential oil on the pathogen or the virus in a laboratory. But these are the oils: garlic, eucalyptus, eugenol from clove, frankincense, lavender, and thyme. Some of the essential oils that have been tested in vitro studies. Now, in vivo preclinical trials, eucalyptus, niaouli, sage, clove, and ginger were some of the essential oils which have been tested in vivo. So this is on living organisms. Sometimes it's on animal testing, but sometimes it is preclinical trials on humans. So these were some of the essential oils for which there is a fair amount of data. Now, Jane Buckle makes a very interesting observation, and this is where I am really surprised, and this really does warrant a completely separate webinar, because I would need to dedicate 1 hour just to this, and we're referring to psychoneuroimmunology, and she's talking about the link between olfaction and the mind and the role that plays in enhancing the immune system. And believe me, it's a very, very important pathway. And if we were to include the psychoneuroimmunology, aromatherapy plays an even bigger role in indirectly supporting and boosting the immune system. Then we would have all those essential oils that induce a relaxation response, that reduce anxiety, such as lavender, such as geranium, ylang-ylang, sandalwood, bergamot, orange. All of these essential oils would play a very important role within psychoneuroimmunology. But guess what? There are very few studies that I could see So please let me know if you know of any studies in the area of psychoneuroimmunology. And as I've said, I'm surprised that the researchers have not focused on this role. And I'm supposing that so far most of the researchers want to focus on the more clear pharmacological pathways. Now, massage. A few studies have been conducted to identify that massage can play a very important role in increasing the level of lymphocytes and hence having a modulating effect on the immune system. And even a short 25-minute whole body massage was found to be quite effective. Now, dare I say that the traditional aromatherapy massage could be a very, very effective way of modulating the immune system. Now, I want to touch on some of the other methods that could be used. Now, what I'm now doing is, okay, what are those methods? And this forest bathing was, for example, not one of those methods that was listed in all these 17 million blogs about supporting the immune system. And yet all these studies have focused on the effects of forest bathing on the immune system. And it's proven, and perhaps because it's working via the psychoneuroimmunology pathways and the olfactory pathways as well. There's lots of, and I spoke about this in length in my presentation, the webinar. So please, if you visit my website, you'll be able to see the blog for forest bathing. And there was also, by now, you should be able to have the access. We'll give you the access if you want to on YouTube to the webinar that I did on forest bathing. But all these papers that I've listed here speak about how forest bathing enhances the natural killer cell activity and promotes the expression of anti-cancer proteins. So it's boosting and supporting the immune system. So spending time in nature. So now let's have a look at herbs, because herbs are very, very important, play a very important role. And yet, I went back through all my old herbal textbooks from when I studied naturopathy, and one of them was with Kerry Bone and Simon Mills, The Principles and Practices of Phytotherapy. And they actually make an interesting point that traditional herbal medicine does not seem to play a very important role in the management of infections or in boosting the immune system, dare I say. Now, here I'm going to play the devil's advocate and suggest maybe this is because the Western medical approach has been so focused on the germ theory, and the more traditional herbal approach had been focused on the terrain theory. That's all I'll talk about. Now, please go and check out that the first part 1, where I talk about the germ theory and the terrain theory, but I'll be writing more about this. Now, Hoffman, also another well-known herbalist who has written extensively about herbs, also says that there has been very little attention paid to those plant immunomodulators by American and European researchers. However, what Hoffman also goes on to say is that many important immunomodulator herbs, such as astragalus and many fungi, many of the fungi that have been traditionally used in TCM for thousands of years and have been used in Ayurvedic practices for thousands of years, actually there are some very important immunomodulating botanicals within these traditional healing systems. Very, very interesting. And it's only been in the last decade or so that Western herbal practice is starting to incorporate some of these remedies within their pharmacopoeia. They're being now added to the Western pharmacopoeia. Now, of course, there is this tendency for the Western brain, the Western way of thinking, to focus on the actives, the bioactives. And if we're going to do that, well, certainly the herbs have a broad range of chemicals and compounds that support the immune system. The phenols, alkaloids, saponins, glucoproteins, terpenoids, which, by the way, are found in the essential oils, fatty acids, and polysaccharides all play a very important role. And the herbs are very complex. And so some herbs are made up of many of these compounds. So studying their effects on the immune system can be quite challenging. Now, others have gone on to say that herbs can play a very important role in modulating the cytokine expression, and in doing so can help to reduce inflammation. And of course, and this is exactly what we're talking about. Now, some of the herbs with immunomodulating activities, now I will be letting you know when I finish this blog. There will be 2 extra blogs that I'll be writing about in the coming month, and that one will be specifically about essential oils. The blog that I've written is a more general blog about boosting the immune system, whereas I'll be writing one more specific about essential oils, and there'll be a more specific one also about herbs. So you will have access to those over the next month. Now, some of the herbs that have been extensively studied: Andrographis, Astragalus, Ignatia, Elderberry, garlic, and turmeric. And now this is just a short list of the more common herbs that have been studied and proven to have immunomodulating activity. I want to just spend a little bit of time looking at some of these very interesting herbs. Now, these are herbs that I would say that I have taken and am taking many of these. Astragalus, it's one that is traditionally found comes from traditionally from Chinese medicine, and it's a very complex chemistry with polysaccharides, saponins, and flavonoids, and it's known to activate the immune response and promote antibody production. Now, it's very interesting that with Astragalus, one study found that it enhanced the immunity of vaccines. Their preliminary studies show that the polysaccharides in Astragalus could be used as an immunoadjuvant to boost one's response to vaccination if they're also taking Astragalus. Ignatia, as I said before, Ignatia is probably one of the best known botanical immunostimulants, even though the early textbooks never referred to it as an immunostimulant. They usually referred to it more as a treatment for colds and flus, a simple treatment for colds and flus. Now, but however, the studies into Ignatia have now shown that it has immunostimulating properties on both the innate and the adaptive immune response. And it's also, as I said before, has antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and antimicrobial effects. And a most recent study has also suggested that it can boost the immune system indirectly by modulating, in a positive way, the gut microbiome. So it is just a good all-rounder. And most of us, I'm sure, are familiar with it. The European Medicines Agency assessment report for Ignatia states that there is extensive documentations in a lot of the herbal texts to show that Ignatia can be given and used for preventing and treating the common cold, flu, and upper respiratory tract infection. However, this is what I found interesting. Another paper suggests that in traditional use, Ignatia was mainly meant to be used therapeutically, not prophylactically, which means it will be used, if you use it right at the onset of the infection for it to have the best effect. If you just take it as a prevention, you're probably not getting the best benefit from it. That's what this statement is suggesting. Now, its benefit, a lot of researchers have shown, is in that it shortens the duration and it lessens the symptoms of illness. And it was saying that the risk reduction was 10 to 20%, but it wasn't able to prevent the illness. So it's not able, this is what this particular research and some other research had also suggested. But others have also suggested that maybe Ignatia is prophylactic. So there is, because from the previous slide, what I was talking about, it may pay to use Ignatia as a prophylactic, but it was traditionally used more as a therapeutic. Now, another one which is fairly similar and also quite almost as common as Ignatia is Sambucus nigra, or elderberries, black elderberries. It's there. A lot of research has been done in this area, and a lot of patented medicine, like herbal medicines, are now available with black elderberry, and they've really been shown to have a beneficial effect on the prevention and the treatment of common colds, influenza, and upper respiratory tract infections. Now, once again, the elderberries are quite complex. Now, the focus has been on elderberries, but in traditional pharmacopoeia, you'll see elderflowers being recommended. Now, the chemistry of the elderflowers is just as complex and very similar to the elderberries, but a lot of the studies seem to focus on the elderberries. The elderflowers are often used in teas, and they have very good diphoretics and also used for treatment for common colds, influenza, and upper respiratory tract infections. However, all the studies focus on the berries. Now, interestingly, elderberry is also able to inactivate and reduce high viral loads of other viruses. It has both pro and anti-inflammatory properties, and so it can actually modulate the secretion of cytokines. Now, a lot of the early papers that came out were not too sure, should we take things like elderberries, should we take Ignatia if you have a fully blown COVID? It's now been shown that it's not going to have any side effects, and it can still be beneficial, that it's not going to exacerbate the cytokine, the inflammation that may be occurring. There will be more benefits from taking it than not taking it. So elderberries, once again, similar to Ignatia, were shown to have a mild inhibitory effect at the early stages of the influenza cycle, but a much stronger effect in the post-infection phase. And it was very interesting because this study also found that elderberry extract blocked key viral proteins responsible for the viral attachment and the entry into the host cells. So it could be, now the studies were not around the COVID-19 virus, but this was around the influenza virus. So it was found to be quite effective in blocking those viral proteins from attacking of the host cells. Now, another one, there was quite a few studies, not as much as elderberries or Ignatia in regards to garlic, but I'm sure many of you are familiar with the role of garlic in helping to support and influence the immune system and helping to maintain what was referred to as the homeostasis of the immune system, helping to maintain a balanced, healthy immune system. Garlic enhances various functions of the immune system by stimulating macrophages and lymphocytes, the natural killer cells, and so on. It's also known to modulate cytokine secretion, so it can help have an anti-inflammatory effect. Now, turmeric is one where there are a lot of studies, but most of the focus around turmeric was on its anti-inflammatory activity. Now, this is where it gets a little bit difficult because by having anti-inflammatory activity means that whether it's an anti-inflammatory essential oil or herb, it's going to modulate the immune system as well. So the main active in turmeric, once again, is curcumin, which is found to significantly modulate the immune response in both experimental and in clinical studies. A lot of research has gone into turmeric. Now, a lot of it has focused more on inflammatory bowel diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, and cancers. Now, let's briefly finish off this is like I wanted to give you an overview because I'm trying to condense this all into an hour. Let's finish off on the importance of nutrition. Now, nutrition is definitely very, very important. And this advice is so important. So it's simple and practical, eating a well-balanced diet. Now, the key term here is the focus should be on whole foods rather than on processed foods. It will definitely have the ability to bolster or boost the immune system. Now, Hamilton goes on to talk about exploring, well, what are the trace elements, what are the constituents in the food, whether it's the phytonutrients, whether it's vitamins themselves, whether it's beta-glucans that are found in the food. And some of the foods can act as prebiotics or probiotics, so support a healthy gut microbiome. Now, the beta-glucans, for example, are found in baker's yeast and in many of the medicinal mushrooms. Very important to include in your diet. Phytonutrients are what give many of the fruits and vegetables their colors. They can be so they're very important as well, to boost the immune system. And of course, healthy diet helps to support the microbiome of the gut. Now, I don't want to go into the specifics of which particular foods you should be eating, but eat a diverse range of whole foods and vegetables and fruits. That seems to be important. Hamilton seemed to suggest that things like Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, and asparagus are very good for supporting the good bacteria in our gut, just to name a few of the foods. Make sure in your food you include regular spices and herbs. Very, very important. Now, I just want to finish off on two other very important vitamins for which there is a lot. I don't even know. I don't even want to use the word controversy. There shouldn't be any controversy over the use of vitamin C, but some critics are still saying that there is no evidence that vitamin C boosts the immune system. When you look at the amount of research, you will actually find that there is a significant amount of research that suggests that vitamin C enhances the cellular function of the innate and adaptive immune system. Perhaps one of the biggest concerns is the bioavailability. So when you dose up on vitamin C orally, you're not going to get the bioavailability of that vitamin in the body that's going to be of benefit. So you end up with expensive weed primarily. However, vitamin C plays such an important role. So you get it, vitamin C, you can get from the food and fruits that you should eat, but also do supplement if you're worried that you're not getting enough vitamin C. But vitamin C also supports phagocytis, it supports immune function, and it supports lymphocyte activity, so it plays a very important role in modulating immune system. So many studies have shown that when there is a vitamin C deficiency, it results in impaired immunity and a higher susceptibility to infections. And infections, on the other hand, if you get infection, it significantly reduces vitamin C levels that may be needed. So that is when you do need to boost up on vitamin C. And so supplementing with vitamin C appears not just to prevent, but also treat respiratory and systemic infections. Now, one writer goes, vitamin C doesn't boost your immune system against coronavirus, but in the same blog, this writer suggests that vitamin C supplement can reduce the duration of the colds in general population. This review found that vitamin C reduced the duration of illness by 8% in adults and 14% in children. And also, studies have been done that found that people under intense physical stress who took vitamin C were less likely to catch a cold than those who did not take vitamin C. So there is plenty of evidence out there to suggest the benefits of vitamin C supplementation and taking vitamin C from vitamin-rich fruits and vegetables. So a lot of these papers are quite recent as well, so a lot of the research is up to date. Now, one last thing, and that is vitamin D. So there are enough epidemiological studies to show that low vitamin D levels will increase the risk, or there should be reduce the risk or the severity, sorry about that typo, the risk or the severity of a respiratory viral infection. Vitamin D decreased the inflammatory response to viral infections in the airway epithelium without jeopardizing the viral clearance, so without jeopardizing the immune response. So vitamin D can also play a very, very important role in supporting the immune system. So look, I would have loved to touched on various different other aspects of supporting the immune system. Please do share with me and share with everybody what other methods you found that have worked for supporting the immune system, for boosting the immune system. If you have any questions, please let me know. Email it through the website or just ask a question now on the chat. I will actually, what I like to do is go through all the different comments, and I will actually summarize them and share them with everybody. So I hope you don't mind me doing that. But there are, yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback. Now, just to finish off, I will be running the masterclass. I will actually be doing a live event here in Brisbane, but if you can't make it to Brisbane, so wherever you may be in the world or in Australia, it will be live streamed. And if you can't watch it live, you will have access to the recording. But this is a very, very exciting project that I've been working on ever since I've been passionate about aromatherapy, and it's to do with aromatherapy and archetypes, and it's about profiling the essential oils and looking at how the importance of archetypes and their significance in our life and the role that they play, and how essential oils can be used to help us understand that the importance of archetypes in our life. So I hope you can enjoy, attend this very exciting webinar that I will be doing. It will be a live event here in Brisbane on Saturday, the 27th of August, but it will also be live streamed. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye.